All right, this is Noah DeFreitas with Noah Fitness, and this is our bodybuilding Q&A. This is session number 5, and I have my co-host, as always, Matt Berzicott. And for any of you guys who do not know Matt, Matt's been a personal friend and mentor for me for the last 7 years, and he's the one who opened me up to the world of bodybuilding. He's been competing since the age of 18. He's done 15 shows since then. And he's also been the runner-up on nationals 4 times, just missing that pro spot. So he's going to crush it this year. He's also been coaching competitors since 2009, so over a decade of coaching experience. So he's worked under the top names. So really such an amount of experience Matt has. And Matt's biggest accolade right now is taking Gerald Williams to the IFBB Pro stage in 20 weeks and qualifying for the Olympia. So Matt, welcome. Super excited to have you. And we also have a special guest tonight, and this is Justin Thomas. So Justin, he is a men's physique competitor, just like myself, but he's also a classic physique competitor and a coach out in Edwardsville, Illinois. And Justin's just going to join us tonight here with some questions he pulled directly from his audience. And we're going to discuss tonight to share our perspective on those questions so that we can help his audience get to that next level. And for anybody who's just tuning in here, the reason why we're doing this is because I am a firm believer that so many of us give up on our goals of becoming a bodybuilder because we think it's us. There's something wrong with us. But truly, the real answer is a lack of guidance and a lack of information. I know this was the case for me, so this is why I want to bring this to you guys, where we are answering your questions directly so we can help you get to the next level. And I want to clarify, when I talk about bodybuilding, it does not mean that you're stepping on a stage and competing. Just like if you like to golf, you don't need to compete in golf tournaments to be a golfer. So if you want to just transform your body in any way, shape, or form, that truly is bodybuilding. So with that, we are going to go ahead and get started here. Justin has given us some awesome questions, and I'm going to talk about them, and we're just going to kind of give our perspective. So first question here from Justin's audience, and a quick preface, any of you guys who have questions, go ahead and comment below in this video, and we will be sure to answer those questions on a subsequent episode. But the first question tonight is, what happens after a show? And this question, although it's broad, it's a good question because a lot of competitors were so focused on getting to that point in time where you're stepping on stage, you know, you're getting into the right condition. All the focus is to the show, but what happens after a show? There's a few things, right? It could be, what do you do next? Is it another show? Or do you go into an off season? Or if you just want to go into real life, what do you need to do? I know there's certain concerns of, you know, during the rebound, if you gain too much fat, or can you take advantage of the rebound? So I'm going to kind of leave it at that, but do either you, Justin, or Matt want to take this one off to say kind of what do you do after a show?
Yeah, I'll start. What do you do after a show? I guess it depends. This is so broad. It's going to depend on, I guess, where you're at in your career, I guess we'll call it. You know, was this just a bucket list thing for you to do a show? There's those types of people. Is it somebody that was really, really good and they won an overall at a competitive local show or regional show, and they're trying to figure out how good they are and should they keep going, or maybe should they go to a junior national show or a national show? Is it somebody that did you know, like me, I feel horrible. Like I'm gonna have to I haven't competed in 2 years. I'm gonna have to do a qualifier. I'm gonna have to do a qualifier next year. So like, whoever that poor person is, I'm sorry now, but you know, like, is it somebody that's like me, that's, you know, has almost got their pro card 4 times, that is just trying to get it done, you know? Like, those are all the things you got to think about, I guess. But I mean, I would say if you don't have another show coming up, you got to take advantage of the rebound. And with that being said, if we want to talk about kind of what's going on physiologically, I think it helps people to understand you're absolutely ravenous. As long as if you are in shape and you dieted hard, you're ravenous because you basically have no leptin. So you've got a couple hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, the main two. Leptin is produced in body fat cells and adipose tissue. Well, if you're doing a show and you're in shape, you really don't have any fat cells. So that means you really have no leptin. And that's leptin is what makes you feel full. So that's why you can just keep eating and keep eating and keep eating, because you don't have any. You also don't have any ghrelin. Ghrelin's produced in the lining of your stomach. So just for people to understand that, like to stop from you physically have to make a choice to stop eating at that time, because you almost have to be just as strict on your rebound if you want to rebound right and take advantage of that time and not get super sloppy fat in a really short amount of time, because it can happen. I remember I gained 30 pounds in a week after my first show when I had no idea what was going on. I know people that have gained that in a day or 2 days, which obviously is we won't even get into like the ramifications of health and the danger that plays in electrolytes. I mean, your heart can stop essentially. So don't do that. Anybody that's thinking about that. So you need to be conscious of those things, what's happening physiologically. But yeah, if you don't have I would say if you don't have a show, you've got to take advantage of the rebound and do that right, because you can make, I mean, I don't want to put a number on it, but you can make like maybe like a year's progress in those 3 months after a show, I want to say.
So let's pause there, Matt. For those who don't know what a rebound is, what is a rebound? And I've heard rebounds to be something positive, kind of like what you're talking about, but also something negative to say, watch out for the rebound. So if you can explain to those who are new, what is a rebound, and how do you take advantage of it, and what's the ramifications of like a bad rebound?
Well, so to separate the two definitions, a bad rebound, we're talking about things like when people are like, oh, you're going to have a water rebound or a fat rebound. When we use it generically, we're thinking more long-term. So rebounding after you do a very long prep, your body is in this, for lack of a better term, just a starved, you're just in a starved state basically. And you are very receptive to food. You're very responsive you're very insulin sensitive. Your body is just basically primed to take the food and partition it into new muscle. But this is also a time where, like I said, you're ravenous, and it's very easy to overeat and gain all the body fat back. You are going to, I made a post about this yesterday. I think people, you can also go about the rebound the wrong way and be too cautious too. So I think that a lot of people they paralyze them. They think they're going to stay this lean all the time. And it's just, it's not realistic. If you're truly in shape, like if you're 4% and under body fat, you can't maintain that. And you're also not really going to grow if you stay at that. So there's a fine line. There's a balance that you need to find. And that's hard to do if you're completely on your own. You don't have someone guiding you, for sure. You're kind of, your head would spin analyzing it all. But that's what I mean by rebound. So you can take this time to add a massive amount of new tissue, of lean muscle tissue, without accruing as much body fat, or your body fat will basically return to what we would consider normal for I'm talking about males here. For men, that kind of 9 to 13% range where you normally would be.
Awesome. Love that answer. So basically, just to summarize, it depends on what you're looking for after the show, whether it's to take your body to the next level, to choose a different show. There's also the choice of, continuing on to regular life. But the main point that Matt's talking about is that there is a specific basic scenario you're in where you're optimized for growth, and that's the rebound. And depending on the way that you take advantage of it, you can actually set your body up for some of the most massive muscular results that you can have, but also you have the risk of, adding body fat if you're not careful as well. And I love that point that you made of saying, because, when you first compete and you're first getting in shape, a lot of us think that we're going to be in shape for the rest of our lives. I thought that. I was like, once I get abs and I compete, I'm good, right? You just kind of like think that's the end. And saying that you cannot hold that level of condition, you're going to be crazy hungry after. I think these are huge, huge considerations that people need to think about. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of us, we're so focused on the show, but what happens after the show?
Yeah. And I think actually mentally too, you bring up another thing that I just thought of. You'll get the post-show blues, we'll call them. Like, you start to see your body, you just looked as awesome as you've ever looked in your life. And then all of a sudden that starts going away week after week. You also maybe feel like you're not working towards something. There's a lot of different, tricks that your mind can play on you. So people need to be prepared for that too.
Mm-hmm.
That's completely normal, and you really just have to, but you have to remember you are working towards something. This is a long process. We're talking years. People get so stuck in the in the micro and the short term side of things. They're not thinking about the long term. You just have to keep the long term goals in mind too.
And I like you saying that, because are you essentially saying you shouldn't be the person that's looking for a one and done thing? There are people that do go for shows and they're just like, that's my one and done thing, and they're hoping that like their body's going to look the same, they're going to be in that same high performance look. But in reality, it doesn't work that way. You have to be working towards the next goal, or you're going to be tuned to some degree. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Cool. So I love that answer. I want to get Justin's perspective here. So Justin, what would you say about this? What would you like to point out about what happens after a show?
Honestly, a lot can happen after a show. I mean, personally, for me, the first thing I did, of course, is I ate. And I ate. Going back to my very first show, like Matt said, if you do it the wrong way, I put on 25 pounds after my first show, just not rebounding the right way. So there's good and bad things about it that can happen. It's about how you utilize it, what your plans are next. Like he said, if you want to do it the right way, you can probably put on 15, 20 pounds of muscle in 3 to 4 months. It's not that hard to do. Or do it the wrong way. You just kind of let everything go, stop the cardio, stop training as hard, don't diet, and then just put on, 30, 40, 50 pounds of body fat and just go back to where you started,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. So what would you say people have to consider is like, should they be shooting for another show? Should they be trying to go to, what if they're trying to go to, let's actually address this. What if they're not trying to do anything else? How do you get out of that in the best way possible? Like, should you be taking advantage and putting muscle on, or should you slowly bring yourself out to something normalized? Because I do know that people sometimes are just done for the time being. So what would you suggest there, Justin? Have you ever had anybody you're working with that they're ready to just kind of normalize out? Because like, for example, I see coaches, they leave people hanging, they prep somebody and then they're done with the show. And it's like, all right, see you later.
All the time.
And especially a female competitor, guys, we're not as kind of worked up about gaining a little body fat on average, but like, man, if you're a woman and maybe you're a little overweight and you finally got that look, and 2 weeks later, nobody told you about how to reverse diet out or anything like that. Talk about like what you would need to do, because the truth is you can gain all that weight back plus more because you're in that very sensitive state. So what would you say you'd say to somebody who wants to just go to normal life?
I would say just do it slowly. I mean, it's kind of hard to say don't do it the right way, because again, without doing it the correct way, it could go bad and they won't be back to normal. Mm-hmm. So I would say like that to that person, just want to normalize a few things, to like just add carbs back in or foods they like in slowly, mm-hmm. and not too fast, like all at one time, especially for women, and men, fats have to do a lot with hormones. When you pull fats away during a diet, hormonally, you're not in the correct pace. And especially for a woman, they need that for hormone functions and everything else. So like I said, I would just normalize it with normal food though. Like, hey, like this week have a burger and fries, and we'll go on to the next week, and so on and so forth.
Cool. I love that. So I have a question for both you guys. And this is something I see and I've debated about before. So you prep for a show, and typically after you're done with that show, a lot of people celebrate. And personally, I believe that the celebration can do a lot of damage. Like I see people, they start really going all in on food, and they get into the downward spiral immediately. Like they wake up ravenous, and then they have another meal and another meal, and they just can't get themselves back. So have you guys ever seen that happen? Is it only me that goes down the spiral? And the question is, should you really celebrate that hard after your show, or should you keep it modest because it is so hard to kind of like get out of that spiral? And then if you're in the spiral, how the hell do you get out of that spiral? So let's start with you, Matt. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I always I let people celebrate. I think that's important.
Okay.
I've never really had a problem. What I typically will do is I'll let people eat that night. So that's usually a Saturday, right?
Mhm.
So they can eat Saturday night, and I'll even let them eat on Sunday. But I'll tell them, most of the time people are traveling, they're out of town, and then they're getting back home on Sunday afternoon or whatever. I'll tell them, knock out a couple spots that you want to go to back home. But then when Monday rolls around, I make sure everyone has their plan on Sunday so they can go to the store Sunday. I think it's important to get back to normal as soon as possible. I think it's totally okay to celebrate, but I think if you give people Saturday, Sunday, and you tell them it's back, it's back. Usually they go back to work Monday too. So it's just imperative that that a coach gets them a plan on Sunday so they can go to the store when they get home Sunday, have everything to go Monday, and then it's just back to normal. But if you give people like a week where you say, Saturday, Sunday, and then eat whatever you want for a week, that's usually when it's a slippery slope, and it's hard for people to get back on track after a week. But I find I've had I don't know that I can't think of any particular situations where that caused a problem giving people 2 days or a day and a half, really.
Love that. Awesome, Matt. And Justin, anything to add or answer that question about, should you not go so hard after your show? And if you are, what's too much and how do you rein it back?
I would agree with Matt 100%. The only thing I take into consideration, especially with older athletes, is drinking. Depending on even if they're not enhanced, the livers or kidneys, there's not enough body fat to even have your organs functioning correctly anyway. So to pour a bunch of alcohol in it could kill you.
I wanted to add, I'm glad you said that. I wanted to add to that. I'm very specific in telling people not to drink alcohol, especially if they're using diuretics. And then I need to know what diuretics they were using. Well, if I'm advising them, obviously I know what they're using, but you can get yourself into trouble, and you can die after a show if you don't know what you're doing, if you took diuretics, for sure.
Wow, that was a killer topic, literally a killer topic there. I personally don't drink, so I never even thought about that. So, and I know people do. That's the main way they celebrate. I celebrate with cheesecake, but people are celebrating with alcohol.
I don't drink either. So it's not something that first pops in my mind until I don't know. I was helping somebody maybe it was a long time ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and they told me that they were drunk. They texted me later that night and they were drunk, and I was like, "Wait, you're drunk?" Like it didn't even cross my mind, So that's a great point.
Bodybuilders are we're kind of nutty, so but a lot of us we don't drink, and so we have to always understand what our clients or students are doing, especially
and that comes down to just knowing your client too. You just have to know them.
Totally. Yeah, I will personally make a note of that. And the final thing I want to just kind of ask you guys is, like I said, a lot of people, they just think about going to the show and they don't think about what happens next. So at minimum, how long do you think you need to continually coach somebody to make sure that they're 100% normalized after a show? Because, people will be like, all right, my show date is this, and you don't have the plan. It's not like, X amount of months it's going to take to get to the next step. A lot of times these plans are kind of like, they're not even in stone yet. So if we can help anybody out there get a vision for what, say they want to just stop for the time being, how long should they be kind of under some guidance to make sure that all that hard work doesn't go down the drain? And
At least 8 weeks.
Okay, great.
At minimum. So 2 to 4 months.
Okay, perfect. I love that answer as well. Justin, what would you say?
I was going to say the exact same thing, especially the reason 8 weeks, I'm pretty sure he has the same thought process behind it, is let's say you have an enhanced athlete. It takes at least 8 weeks to get all their post-cycle stuff out of the system.
Gotcha. Great answers here. Well, awesome. If you guys like that conversation about what to do, after prep, during prep, please comment any more questions, how we can clarify and get you further down that line. I think that was a great one to kick it off. But we'll go ahead and go to our next question here. And this is getting into the enhancement side of things. This is the truth of bodybuilding. There are natural competitors, but also there are enhanced competitors. So this is a question about the enhanced side of things. So this question says, do you think an enhanced competitor, so this is a subjective one, I kind of like these questions. Do you think an enhanced competitor on average preps harder than natural competitors? This one's real gray. So Matt, take it away, or whoever actually.
I'll let him go first since I went first the last time.
Okay. I'll say this. I think it all depends on the competitor and how hard they prep personally. I mean, honestly, I've seen guys that are natural come in more conditioned than guys that are enhanced. So for me, I would say it's all about the competitor. Like, yeah, the enhanced athletes have something to help them go deeper into a deficit per se. But I think it depends on the competitor, 100%.
Totally. The mentality and the competitor. How about you, Matt? What would you say?
Yeah, I think you could reword the question maybe and say, because it depends on the person. Your drive and your work ethic that isn't dependent upon if you're taking stuff or not taking stuff. So
100%.
Maybe they meant like, can an enhanced person prep harder than a natural person? The answer to that is yeah, absolutely. There's more of a safety net there where we don't have to worry about flatness and losing muscle tissue as much as a natural person does, for sure. And when we have things like like T3 for instance, we have all these other tools to use to throw in as we move along a prep that they don't have. So it just makes it more efficient, for sure.
Yeah, I think that was a great thing to do because, it was kind of an easy answer there that we found. It depends on the person. Anybody who works hard, it doesn't matter if you're enhanced or if you're natural, you're going to work hard. So that's not going to be the catalyst. But if you reword it and you say, does enhancement give you the opportunity to kind of push the threshold harder? And Matt, your answer was yes, that when you have things that are preserving your muscle mass, that are keeping your metabolism higher, you can, of course, push harder in those areas without seeing as much of a negative effect. Is that right?
Yeah, and notice I said it lets people work harder, where most people would think, well, they're on stuff, they must not work as hard. It's the opposite, It's not doing the work for you like everyone thinks.
I love that answer as well. So it gives you the opportunity to push harder. So no matter what, the person that pushes harder is typically going to be, the victor. Enhancements are, of course, going to help them, keep everything in check more when you are pushing harder. So
there's a debate. We could debate whether or not preparing properly for a bodybuilding show. You could debate, is it healthier to do it on drugs versus natural? That's a debate. That's a debate in itself. People that are familiar with cycling, like the Tour de France, the Tour de France, like a lot of people don't realize the reason why all those guys are still using drugs is because it's fucking brutal. And those guys are 100% healthier using drugs. They have to use drugs to finish. So they don't, I'm not going to say so they don't die, but so they're not, not on death's door.
Yeah. Okay.
You could say the same thing. You could say the same thing for a bodybuilding show.
That's an interesting perspective. And, That's a really good one to think about. But yeah, you're right. You know, if something's keeping you able to push longer, and these guys could potentially push until they die, you know, keeping them in the game, you know, that can be a total argument for advanced competitors. So, Justin, what would you say your take is on on how Matt kind of reworded it? Does being enhanced allow you to push harder?
I would say 100%. Again, I've seen certain people on the natural side get into this different gauge when it comes into prepping, but being enhanced, I mean, yeah, man, it's going to give you the full capability of pushing harder just because it in its own is pushing yourself harder. Like doing that alone is pushing yourself harder. There's different feels when it comes to, you know, your enhanced athletes. We have different compounds that may trigger different things in our body. So yeah, 100%.
Awesome, man. I think that was a great question. That's one of those gray area subjective questions, and into the area of enhancement. And of course, the biggest thing is, and that what people and I love that you pointed this out, Matt. There's a give and a take to everything that you do. There's a risk to reward profile in everything that you do, whether it's natural or enhanced. So you have to understand what the risks are to it all. You know, prepping naturally has, you know, plenty of risks. You know, I'm not going to say the same risks, but plenty of risks, just as doing anything enhanced.
Yeah,
So
different risks for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
And this always is where you have to do your own research. You have to be understanding what you're getting into, no matter what you do. So that's why, you know, you see, especially coaches, people who've been in this industry for a while. They've done countless hours of research to figure this stuff out. So definitely do your due diligence when it comes to anything on that side of the equation. Awesome. So let's go ahead and go to this next question. We've kind of answered this one a little bit here, but I think it's a good one to rehash out. But and it's put very well. Is it better to lean out first, then bulk, or bulk first, then lean out? Which one of you guys would like to take that question first?
It depends what you're starting. It depends what you look like now and what your starting point is. If you're fat and sloppy, then yeah, you need to focus on leaning out first to get yourself. Yeah, we talked about this last show, to correct anything hormonally that's off, to correct, just basically to get yourself normal and in a good spot to add muscle tissue. So it's like I guess people want to call them mini diets or whatever, and then you kind of have a mini rebound effect after it. But if you're someone that's, you know, if you're someone that's in really good shape and really lean, you know, let's start. I hate the word bulking, really. You know, I think we should just kill that word and never say it again, because, you know, you're still like very few people that I help am I just focusing on bulking. I mean, you have to have it's only people with really gifted metabolisms that you're doing that with. Otherwise you're pretty much, what I'm doing is focusing on improving body parts and feeding them enough food for that to happen. Think of it that way versus bulking.
That's an awesome point. I think the biggest problem in any realm is where we talk about things in absolutes or extremes. However, when it comes to saying things with the least amount of words, often extremes and absolutes are the way to do it. So I think it's definitely a huge thing that we always clarify that stuff, that, you know, we're talking in absolutes, and that's rarely ever the case, absolutes. That's why I'm not going to get into it, but like, you know, so many people are doing cookie cutter diets, you know, keto, or like, you know, a high carb diet, going to the ends of the spectrum, when rarely that's ever the case. But the average individual is choosing these things. Just like with bulking and cutting, it's like I'm cutting or I'm bulking, and how you're saying it, Matt, is perfect. It's really what you need, what's most optimal to improve on now. And I really, really like that. And there's actually, and I'll move on to Justin's opinion here in a second here, but there's actually do you guys know Reddit, the forum, Reddit?
Yeah.
I think there's like 1 million subscribers to this subreddit called Cut or Bulk. Like, it's that pertinent of a question. So we're really, really, you know, torn on this stuff. So it is an important question to answer. So I'll give it to you, Justin. What's your take on whether somebody should cut first or, bulk? Either of those, way outblown extreme words are, but tell me what your opinion is there.
I agree with Matt. Everything he said was on point. Now let's look at it in the perspective of, let's say I'm a coach, right? And I pick up someone who wants to compete. It depends on where they're at. Like if they want to prep for a show, let's say you just know that in their class they wouldn't do damage or do how well they wanted to because of how small they are. It might be better to recommend they bulk for a little bit and then prep for a show. Or if you have a client that's not in the best shape body fat wise that wants to continue to bulk, maybe it's better to cut them down, see what's under the hood, and see what we can work on and to improve on into our bulk. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Totally. And the way I kind of think of it is you kind of have three scenarios. Like it all comes down to, I think, Matt, your approach is exactly spot on. What really do you need to optimize right now? Because there's a certain level of fat where it's like, we need to get the fat off, like you just can't be that fat. And there's a certain level of skinny where it's like, it just makes sense. If you want to build muscle, like let's start pushing it hard here. You have a crazy high metabolism. But most of us, we're kind of falling in the middle ground there. So that's where it's going to become so much more subjective on where you go next. And the one thing I don't think we necessarily pegged is, and this is pretty much answering what you were saying, Matt, and this might be the taboo word to use, but is a recomposition. We're essentially always recomping somebody, right?
Always.
We're trying to optimize your body fat loss with muscle mass gain, but the answer is, to what degree? Are we going more of a focus on losing body fat, or are we going more a focus on getting muscle mass? So what do you guys think about that?
I think that's a perfect way to put it. You're always recomping. It's just what side of the spectrum are you emphasizing more? Yeah, that's great.
Cool. Justin, any last comments about this question?
No.
Sweet. I really like this next question coming up. I think this is going to be cool to hear you guys' perspective here. But what is the hardest part about prep? I love that question because I'm curious. What is it? So Justin or Matt, go ahead and let me know if you guys want to take it away. What's the hardest part about prep?
Go ahead, Justin.
Honestly, for me personally, there's a couple things. One is that I've honestly never had a coach feed me to a show. So I've always gone like no carbs last month and a half, 2 months up until a quote unquote peak week, is just training on no food. Like I don't hate it, but I hate like going into the gym like depleted on no food and like trying to move weight and like enjoy training when I'm so tired. But other than that, I have kids, so like seeing the kids eat snacks or the good food all the time every day. But those are the two hardest things for me, and they don't get that bad.
Awesome. I love that you pointed that out. I'll tell a quick story here. Personally, we see all these photos in the magazines, right? These guys are shredded and they're doing their photo shoots, and you see the cover photo. And anybody who's not in bodybuilding assumes that they have a full belly of food, they're happy, they're training, and it feels great, they're strong, but that's not the case. Most of those guys are freaking starving. And I read Dorian Yates's biography, and for those of you who don't know who Dorian Yates is, he's a legendary bodybuilder. But he said you have to know how to train while you're starving to be a good bodybuilder, because he was one of the bodybuilders who brought conditioning to a completely different level. There's photos on the internet that look like they're photoshopped, and they're not. Photoshop wasn't invented in those days, and he was a photoshopped, quote, photoshopped photo. So he brought conditioning to the next level. And what he said, you have to be willing to suffer all the time. And for those of you who are getting into bodybuilding, you might not know this. And it really is something, I think everybody has the inner strength to do this stuff. It just depends on what your drive is. If you're a little confused like I was, to think that in the gym you're just gonna be looking peeled and feeling great, it's actually the exact opposite. You feel like hell when you're peeled. So be prepared for that. And Justin, I think that was an awesome point on what the hardest part of prep was. So Matt, what's the hardest part of prep?
Well, first, dude, you're so right. Cause like most, like normal people, when I say normal people, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just mean like people that have no idea about bodybuilding. They think that we gain weight into a show. You know, they're like, so how much weight do you have to gain for the show? And I'm like, what do you mean? I have to lose 40 pounds. And they're like 40 pounds. Like, where are you going to lose it from? And I'm like, oh my God. Like our off season look to them is, you know, lean. They don't understand. They think that we're gaining weight up to the show, but so that's funny you said that. It's a good point.
Do you know what's funny, Matt? Is I was that chump who asked you that question. Well, I remember distinctly in Gold's Gym, I looked at you, you were peeled out of your mind, like fire hose veins everywhere. I was like, dude, how much weight did you gain?
Did you really? You were?
I was literally that guy. I said, dude, how much weight did you gain? And you go, dude, I'm down 30 pounds.
Oh my God, that was
what the hell? I walked away like, what is life?
Yeah, and you were like probably 200, and you're like, so I'm going to be 170?
Yep.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Blew me away. And the truth to that question, and to help explain why people think that, is because when you cut down, you now see the dimensions of the muscle. So when you have body fat or water around your muscles, you don't see the three-dimensional appeal. So you actually look smaller when you might be 30, 40 pounds heavier. So when you shred, I remember every time I like to do, you know, some fun stuff, you know, you might wear a tighter shirt to the gym when you're a few weeks out. I will always get the same comment. Dude, you got huge. And, you know, we're down 30, 40 pounds. It's because you get that 3D look. So for any of you guys that see bodybuilders, they're actually at their lowest weight when they're.
You look bigger in the off. You look bigger in the off season with clothes on, but you look bigger with clothes off when you're dieting. Yeah, 100%. Or when you're show ready, and you look smaller with clothes on. What was the question?
So what's the hardest part about prep? What would you say? I want your personal opinion. You can give your clients, you know, your students' opinions too, kind of like what they struggle with. And Justin, we can go back to you with that question. But I just want your personal.
They all struggle with the same things, just the not being able to eat what they want to eat. But for me, like, that used to bother me when I was younger, but the older I get, that the food doesn't really bother me. It's just like the zombie having no energy to do anything. Like, I don't mind training that way, because it's like, once I get to the gym, that's like the only thing I gotta like really like get up for that day. And I kind of feel like, you know, like fucking Rocky Balboa, like you just go to this like insane, you just flip a switch and go to this dark place where you just pull like everything bad that's ever happened out in your life, every time, every session, and then you get through it. The harder parts for me are just like when you're sitting on the couch watching TV and you got to get up to piss, and you just don't want to, you just don't get up, and you hold it for as long as you possibly can until you feel like your wiener's going to explode. Like, it's stuff like that. Like, you know, like I don't, like, you're ravenous, but you don't even want to get up to like heat your food up, you know?
It's so funny you say this. I have to pause here, Matt, because unless anybody has been on a real deal bodybuilding stage, they literally are not going to be able to relate whatsoever, because they don't understand. And do you guys know who Greg Doucette is?
Yeah.
Okay. He put it so perfectly, because I was a personal trainer when I did bodybuilding shows, and when anybody was like done with their set and I had to just put the pin down, one more pin, I was like, oh God, like, I don't want to put that pin down. And Greg Doucette was like, you know, when you're peeled, when you got to change lanes when you're driving, but you're just too tired to check your meter and change lanes. So you just change without looking. And I'm like,
that is so true. Dude, he's funny. He's a funny dude.
I was like,
he's
that's
hilarious.
The level. It's literally, you're that exhausted. So I think that's a stellar example, and a hilarious one too. You just don't know unless you know. Personally, I would say the hardest thing for me is just dealing with the shit of life on top of prep. I just think it makes it a lot harder. I think it was hard to kind of get my mind around training on zero energy. But I remember preps where I was like starting two businesses at once. I was dissolving another business. I was starting a relationship. I had conflicts at home and just all that stuff on top of prep. You're just like, oh my God, like it's almost like you're not even human anymore. So, dealing with customer service, making sure your students are happy. If you are like an in-person trainer, if you're entertaining people, I really think people have it nice, especially now that, I work remotely, or if you have like a job where you don't have to deal with like, people. I think it's really helpful because people just don't understand. They look at you and you're just like, you're in some other planet and they just can't connect the dots. No matter what you say, like if they don't understand bodybuilding, you can't be like, yeah, I've been starving for 3 months. They're like, oh, well, what the hell's wrong?
Yeah.
There's no justification. So you pretty much have to just, deal with you being this alien through the rest of life. So personally, that's been my most challenging part about.
That's why you always dump your girlfriend and quit your job at the beginning. You just
literally would make prep so easy. I remember Nick Walker. He was like, "Yep, this is the only girlfriend that made it through my prep."
Yeah, he's got the right idea for if you're gonna make it, for sure. I've spent a lot of time talking to him lately, and he's not gonna let anybody or anything interfere. And that's intriguing to me because that's something that I have not been able to do, as you know, throughout my career. I haven't been able to put specifically women on the back burner. But that's a whole nother topic. Like it's just the champion's mindset. The guys that get it done in any sport or business people, they don't let anything else in their life bother them from or deter them from what they're doing to get where they need to get. 100%. And that's something I found very intriguing. I always like talking to people like that because it gives me their perspective and it's completely different from mine. And I'm like, listening to Nick talk when I got to spend time with him when I was in Florida last week or 2 weeks ago, it was just like, this guy's gonna make it. Like, like I can tell like our mindsets are so different. Like I need to hang around, even though he's younger than me, I need to hang around this guy for a little bit, for a couple more years,
Yeah, there absolutely is that kind of next level mindset. But Matt, you have a gigantic heart. So anything that did hit you, it's because, of your big heart. So I don't think anything's in vain.
Yeah. I just learned the hard way to, I don't know how I want to word it.
No, but I think it all happens for a reason, and your heart, it's second to none, man, and that's why you have so many fans, including myself. But Justin, any last points you want to talk about on kind of dealing with relationships and prep, or the pains of prep?
Well, he's got kids. Talk about that.
That's a great topic.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, nothing changes with the kids and me during prep, besides like me sharing snacks and whatnot. I still take them out to eat ice cream. I feed them their snacks, all that fun stuff. I mean, at a certain point, especially if you're like a dad or like a husband or whatever, there's got to be like a stable ground you can keep yourself during prep, especially for either your significant other or your kids. I feel like most of those relationships end either the supporter doesn't get what the other one's doing, or just the one prepping just gets so enraged for some reason or out of character in prep that the other one just leaves. Mm-hmm. I don't think anything should change as a partner or a parent in prep ever.
Yeah, that's truly a tough dynamic, and I like that point that you made. Is really, if they don't understand, if you don't have that dynamic of what's really going on between people, it can be challenging. And I definitely agree as well. Going that extra mile, I think those of us that are in prep, it is our responsibility to some degree to understand that, like, you can't be a total jackass to the world, just because we're doing, the sport of bodybuilding. So you have to kind of own that. And I think that's super important as Love those points. Go on to the last question here. Let's see. Okay, this is about prep length. I think this is a great question. I personally have a lot of questions here too. So how long should somebody prep? Is there rules of thumb? Is there stuff like really, so this is gonna be good for anybody watching here that wants to know truly when it's time to prep. So what would you guys say on how long you should go for a prep? What variables do you need to consider?
Matt, you can go ahead with that.
Did you hear the question, Matt?
I'll let Justin go because mine's been. Do you want me to go?
Somebody's lagging, but Justin called you
Yeah,
out.
but you're frozen on my screen. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good now.
Can you hear me though?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, you're back now, I think.
Okay.
Oh man, the length, I'm sorry, people, you guys are gonna get so sick of my non-black and white answers. Again, it just depends. It depends on, have you ever helped this, as a coach, I'm like, have I ever helped this person before? Okay. If the answer is no, I'm gonna want as long of time as I can possibly have with them. So either as long as they can afford financially or whatever it may be. I want 20 weeks plus, preferably for people I've never worked with before. That'll give me time to kind of figure out, just to learn their body will take me, a little while. If it's somebody that, let's say they're like a really advanced competitor, like they're a pro bodybuilder and they're big and they've got a lot of muscle and they're in good shape, you may not need as much time. You may need, you could do that could be a situation where they come to me and they're like 10 weeks out, and I wouldn't have any problem with that. It just depends what level someone's at. If it's a bikini competitor, she probably won't need as much time as other people. It's just, I can't really give like a number that's a universal number that's appropriate. Depends how out of shape someone is, depends how in shape they are, depends how much muscle they have, depends how many shows they've done in the past, depends if I've worked with them in the past. There's a lot of variables.
Totally.
But I would say, to be on the safe side, if someone is going to compete, the number that I'd put on it that I would ideally want with somebody is 16 to 20 weeks.
Love that. Awesome. Before I make a few comments,
there's also one more thing. It depends on their personality too. Some people cannot hold their shit together that long. So it kind of comes down to someone's personality. If they just, I don't want to call them a shit show, but that's the word that comes to my mind. If they can only be really strict for a short amount of time, maybe they're someone that you just do 10-week all out preps with, and that just might be their style. That's the only way it works for them. There's those people too.
Totally. Awesome. Love that answer. Justin, what would you say on how long before a show should they start prepping?
I agree with Matt 100%. The biggest things I look at, honestly, like he said, if I'm a coach, if I've been with you in the off season, how productive one was the off season, but how in shape are you still, leading into the show. On the safe side, like he said, I'd say 16 weeks at least. If you want I can definitely make this happen 100%, time frame. But then if it's a new person and, let's say they're just, I don't know, I can't say you're too small to prep someone, but there's a point where prepping them wouldn't take anything but a week's worth of dieting or so. It just depends. There's a lot of different ways to get into this subject, but Matt summed it up and I'm just going to stop there.
Cool.
There's people that come to me peeled out of their mind and they're like, hey man, I'm 16 weeks out. And I'm like, holy shit. All I need is 2 weeks,
That's awesome.
But even in those cases, you can help those people a lot because they'll usually grow for a while and then you bring them back down. So it's just crazy to see how different people are. And in his mind, a lot of those people's minds, they're fat, you know, they think that they're fat. And then I'm looking at them like, I only need you to, I could get you ready in 2 weeks, you know?
That's awesome. There's so many
So,
people that are pissed at that person.
yeah.
I love the answer to that. I think that the key takeaway for me there was getting to know that person and how their body works and working with them for at least a little bit beforehand. I think that's so critical because, a lot of people, and this is the toughest thing, and I like to address this as a coach, is when you start with somebody, like a lot of people are like results, results, results. But it really, that's a flawed expectation off the get-go. It should be learn that person and then hammer it down to what the real direction needs to be. So I think that's so critical that you guys said that when it comes to a prep, is like the more time you get to learn that person's body, the better you're going to be off. If it takes 4 weeks to really get to understand how the heck people work, and as we all know, maybe those listening, they don't know, that people can vary pretty drastically in how they react to things. So, some people do terrible with a lot of protein. Some people really don't need much food. So understanding those things is so critical to hammer into that perfect polished look. So if you come to somebody and say, I have 12 weeks to the show and it takes you 4 weeks to understand that person's body, that's only an 8-week prep. That's not a 12-week prep.
Yeah.
So I think that's a killer point too. If you can get to a coach with the most amount of time possible, to get you guys into the best shape possible, to learn your body, to be okay with actually taking that time to learn that person, I think that's stellar there. Cool. Any last comments about prep length or how long you should prep?
No, like you said, longer the better usually.
Gotcha.
Unless you're somebody that just looks at it like there's those people that just hate prep and hate, they can only hold it together for 2 months or 10 weeks and that's all they got.
Mm-hmm.
You got to find out if you're one of those people. You just got to tell the coach up front.
I love that. That's a great point as well. It is arduous. If anybody's done like a serious 24-week prep, it can add up.
It's a long prep. Yeah.
It's a long freaking prep. So I want to just end this with one personal question here. Now that I got you guys on here, is what do you think, and I'm going to get kind of dig into the coaches out there. What do you think of these coaches getting people literally 2 weeks out peeled, 10 to 20 weeks out? And they do it to flaunt their clients. It's like, look at this, 16 weeks out, grainy. And is that necessary? And to my opinion, I think it's detrimental. We all know if you're seeing separation in striations, there's no more sex drive. You're not feeling awesome every single day. So you're basically just taking that person and just sticking them in this compromised position for 16 weeks that they didn't need to be in that dialed shape. And I just want to know your opinion on that. Have you seen that before? And what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I've seen it. I mean, it could work, I guess. I mean, I would love to hear if they have a rationale behind it, maybe, I don't know. I mean, you could, if it's that far out, you could rebound somebody and then bring them down again. But that just seems like a lot of unnecessary work.
For example, I worked with a coach and I was literally ripped 10 weeks out and I didn't get much better. And I was basically doing 3 hours of cardio a day for 10 weeks solid. No carbs.
Oh,
10
so
weeks
he just
solid.
kept you there for 10 weeks?
Yep, 10 weeks. And I was
That's awful.
I didn't get better. I got marginally better, which maybe I want to ask you, is that a thing? But I was just peak week for 10 weeks, basically.
Yeah, no, if that's the case, I don't see any reasoning behind that whatsoever at all. I think that was just a case of negligence.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what I was feeling. How about you, Justin? Have you ever seen that before?
100%. And a lot of that, honestly, is due to a couple reasons. I see it all the time here is either A, the coach is as education is just trash, or B, they need that one client to flaunt because there's not much else they got. It's a money thing for the coach. And then again, back to the uneducation side of things. But I think there's no reason to do that to an athlete unless you plan on feeding that athlete into the show ahead of time.
Gotcha. I love those answers. And that's kind of the thing I've been seeing is it looks great when your clients are shredded, but I've been seeing some numbers that just don't make sense. Peel, like literally grainy peeled 16 weeks out. I'm like, I would murder myself 16 weeks out like that. If I'm seeing grains, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, dude, you know what? Okay. So now I'm thinking about myself where I'll see guys that I'm going to compete against, right? And it's kind of the same thing. It's like they're 12 weeks out versus my 12-week outlook. They would crush me, right? Because their conditioning is so much better. But then the show comes and they're worse and I destroy them.
All the time.
Why are they doing that? Yeah, that would be my question. What is the, your point of you don't get better? You're 100% right. If you're there, you're there. You can't hold it for that long.
Exactly. And I think Justin's nailing it on the head. It's for these like marketing perspectives. What's better on IG than seeing, like anybody ripped as hell looking like, oh my gosh, if that's 12 weeks, well, what's the day of going to look like?
I think in your case, I know who you're talking about. He has a lot of clients. I think it was just negligence. I think he just wasn't paying attention.
Gotcha. Yeah. That definitely could be the case. So I've just been seeing it with some other people too, and it's really just.
He was probably like, wait, what? You're 10 weeks out? Oh shit! And then he's like, well, I'll just keep this going, I guess. Like you didn't even know when your show was.
That so could be true. Oh God, that was brutal. Like Justin, if you don't know, Matt was like, this was the example in last prep. Matt was like, hey, show me what you looked like last year, 10 weeks out. And I showed him and I was just like diced. Yeah. He was like, holy shit. Like that's 2 weeks out right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I think to both your guys' point, I think they're totally correct. It's either from, some sort of negligence or lack of education or trying to, get some more followers showing that people are, ripped where it really doesn't make sense. Oh, you back, Matt?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, awesome. Yep, we did go over, but Justin, I appreciate your time tremendously. I just want to ask, if anybody wants to reach out to you, what is the best way that they can contact you?
Probably Instagram at Justin Thomas Fitness, all one word.
Sweet. Awesome, Justin. I appreciate you so much. Are there any parting words or anything you'd like to say before we end this call?
No, it was nice to meet you, Matt.
Yeah, you too, buddy. We'll stay in touch.
Sweet.
Absolutely.
And then also, Matt, for anybody that wants to reach out to you, ask any questions, how can they reach out to you?
Probably my OnlyFans account. Just kidding. I don't have an OnlyFans. Instagram, Matt.Berzicott.
Why did that streak of idea of like I should create an OnlyFans that totally shot across your mind? Awesome. And Matt, was there anything you'd like to part everybody with? Any comments?
No, I'll stay off my soapbox tonight.
Cool.
Next time I'll have something probably.
Sweet.
I need to eat.
Me too.
Have you seen this yum sauce I found?
I've heard of this.
Well, did you ever when you lived in Des Moines, did you go to Taki or Ohana Steakhouse ever? Like the hibachi grills?
Yeah.
That's like the orange sauce that they use. I found it at Hy-Vee.
Okay.
And I am well on my way to 290 now. I'm telling you.
All right.
Like I am eating my chicken and rice and beef and rice like nothing.
There we go. So Matt actually leaves us with a freaking gem that he was about to just toss off without yum yum sauce.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Go to, if you're someone that has a hard time eating chicken and rice or whatever it is, go to your supermarket and go to the Asian section and look for yum yum sauce.
Awesome.
And that will be your fat source for that meal. You can't just like not account for it, but it makes a world of difference.
Totally. And this is coming from a dude who takes a half hour to eat every meal. So
an hour.
An hour. So if he's getting it
I'm down to like 10 minutes now.
That's huge. So this is a huge gem right there. Super appreciate that. So any of you guys, if you loved what we're doing here, if you have any questions that we can help you get to the next level, we are more than willing to do that. We're answering all of your questions directly. So I appreciate everybody who tuned in, especially if you listened to this far. That is super killer. But again, Justin, appreciate you for hopping on. If you ever want to hop on again, you are more than welcome. And Matt, as always, thank you so much, my man. But let's go ahead and end this call, and we'll see you guys later. Peace.